with my family, and they must be faced.
Netflix's The Last Kingdom, which first came out back in 2015, has grown in popularity as well as audience over the years as the epic battles, heroic deeds, and themes of love and courage captured fans everywhere. Along with its amazing plots and features, The Last Kingdom has also had some great unscripted moments, as well as some behind-the-scenes stories, which is what we'll be discussing today, so stay tuned. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. The Last Kingdom was recently renewed for a 5th season on Netflix, which means that one of the characters, Ethelhelm, who's played by Adrian Schiller, is primed to continue on in the show and keep on scheming to ensure his grandson ends up on the throne of England. Being introduced in Season 3, Schiller has had some interesting moments while filming, as well as some fun behind-the-scenes stories. When asked in an interview about his most difficult scene to film in Season 4, Schiller pulled the curtain back on a little movie magic. "I think that some of the most fun stuff to do were the scenes where we were all locked up after Brita and Sigtrygr take Winchester," he said. "That was great fun. I very much like doing the scenes with Emily. I think she's fantastic. From more of an acting point of view, they were more challenging, although they weren't necessarily dialogue heavy. And technically speaking, the more difficult scenes are the big scenes where a lot of people are talking or everyone's around the dinner table. Actually, there was a big scene that we did with the elder man and Mercia, where there was a dinner scene, and for various reasons, one being my baby wasn't very well, I had to come back to London in the middle of it all. You wouldn't be able to tell, but some of it was shot without me being there, and then some of it when I was there. The other lot weren't there. You can't tell, it's just very well edited." Peeling back the curtain just a little more, Schiller revealed how he landed the part of Ethelhelm in the first place. "I think it's the way they go with a lot of these relatively long-running shows now. It's sort of experimental. They didn't actually audition me for this. They said, 'We've got this new character that we're bringing in. Do you want to come in and do it?' I can't remember exactly, but I think in the first place it was going to be like 2 or 3 episodes. No, but that would be the end of it, just like we're going to try it out. We're gonna run it around the block and see how it works." Adding on from that, Schiller explained, "Obviously they liked the character and wove him in further and further. I think that's very often the way, not just this show, but a lot of shows. They'll probably plan out, Season 1, Season 2 before they start. After that, they've got to take the temperature of the audience. They've got to work out the storylines that they are engaged with and the ones that they care less about. They've got to work out which of their major characters they can keep, which they're gonna dispose of. Then it starts to have a life of its own, yeah? So then you start bringing in new characters, new storylines, and those experiments, and then it's just sort of generating itself rather than something that's just got past the planning stage. I came in the middle of that. I'm glad to say that they carried on through into the next season. So it was all a bit of an experiment, and I didn't think anybody really knew exactly who he was before we started." Speaking of experimenting, Schiller also went on to talk about the improvisation that went on set, once again revealing how sausage is made. "One of the things that one learns is sometimes you have a bit of dialogue or something, and it doesn't feel quite right, or it needs a bit of a tweak. But oftentimes when actors don't really like whatever it is, that's the bit that they need to solve. If they solve it, the whole thing works much, much better. Generally speaking, the writers will give you stuff which may have some uncomfortable corners in it, or things which are a little bit difficult to say, and they've written like that for a reason. If you can find out what the reason is, you're probably gonna do a better job, because actors aren't writers. Even if they are, that's not their job in this particular place. What actors will often do is they just kind of soften it. They make it a little bit the same because it's not their skill set. That's not a criticism, it's just not what you're supposed to be doing. So the vocabulary will decrease, and there will be more hesitations and people touching their face and scratching their arses. But this statement isn't meant to give off the impression that Schiller isn't appreciative of the writer's work, as he explained how he could recognize that the writers definitely knew what they were doing when writing the scripts, especially for this character, which is why he generally sticks to the script, stating, "A little bit of improvisation, like you say, is okay, but it's just better not to. If you could manage to do what they wrote, chances are it's going to be better than anything you come up with on the day. Scripts will go through processes and processes bosses, and sometimes they can make things flatten a bit. But what it really means is that maybe a couple of writers and 3 or 4 executive producers have really thought very, very hard about every bit of it. You start changing that and you're changing weeks of work. What almost always happens if you say, "Wouldn't this be a good idea?" They say, "All right," then we shoot it, and it never makes the edit. Finally, with all of the serious questions aside, Schiller revealed an embarrassing story from set, which usually involves horses, but not always. "I've been racking my brains. I couldn't think of anything sufficiently embarrassing," he said. "I haven't spent that much time on the horses. I don't do an awful lot of riding around. I do remember that the little boy who plays my grandson, who was terribly sweet, in the middle of a very important scene, he farted very loudly. He was absolutely mortified, the little chap. Everyone thought it was hilarious, and he just stared around with these huge eyes, and we all had to say, 'Oh no, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right.'" But on a serious note, Schiller added, "Without being too personal about it, last season I was quite often preoccupied because my little boy wasn't very well. He's fine now, but I was always in a rush. I was always flying back to London. I must have spent so many hours on planes, it was ridiculous. So in a way, that whole period of time, my intense memories are to do with looking after my little boy. I have very fond memories of shooting, but there was a bit of a whirlwind, all happening at the same time." The Last Kingdom is known for its unflinching brutality on screen, and the lead star of the show revealed a rather shocking off-camera moment during filming for Season 1. Alexander Dreymon, who plays Uhtred of Bebbanburg in the drama, has opened up about the time he nearly broke a man's nose while shooting a climactic battle scene for the end of Season 1. Speaking in an interview, the 34-year-old admitted, "During that sequence, I did kick somebody in the face and almost broke his nose, and that was one of the worst moments." Dreymon stated that he actually found it scarier injuring someone else rather than getting hurt himself, saying that afterwards he had to carry on as if nothing had happened and finish filming the explosive scenes. But the moment the camera cut, he said he left Uhtred to one side and returned to himself. "You stop being a warrior and stop screaming and killing people, and you turn back into a human being, and you realize you've just kicked someone in the face." The actor went on to say, of course he was okay, and when something like that happens, he'll tell you, "Mate, that's my job, that's why I'm here, don't worry about it." Still, it is a horrible experience, but it happens, and it's part of it. Luckily, working on the other seasons of The Last Kingdom was less dramatic off-camera, and Alexander only sustained some cuts, bruises, and sprained ankles. Aside from the actors of the show, one of the writers of The Last Kingdom, Stephen Bichard, has also had some things to say about the series. In an interview, Bichard was asked who his favorite character to write was, and it took him a while to pick just one. "I love writing Uhtred and Alfred, the scenes between Uhtred and Bianca as well, but I also loved Ethelwald. Harry is such a great actor, you knew what you were getting. I loved his whole journey, you know, from being sort of a buffoon, kind of a lovable idiot, to just growing darker and darker. The throne was rightfully his, and that just festered and made him a darker person. And again, it was Ragnar's death that gave Ethelwald the perfect ending as well. I really enjoyed writing for him because he was very funny at times, but totally selfish. And while grand moments like character deaths and such are important to a show, smaller moments are just as vital, according to Bichard." The writer went on to talk passionately about moments that don't necessarily move the plot forward. "It's really important. You must see them as people, as real people. They got into that game of stones, and that made me smile as well because it's about execution as well. The actors are just so gifted. At the end of that game, where it's like a race for them to go and find Uhtred first, you see they're like little boys. They're big warriors, but they try to get to Uhtred first. I just thought about their bond and their affection for their boss." While small moments like this might appear improvised, Bichard assured us that they're not, as he didn't always encourage it in certain scenes since the plot of the series was so planned out. With that said, that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.